I'm going to give you 13 topics of discussion to plan to talk about, inshallah. You don't have to talk about them all at once. It's not an interrogation. Number one, what do you think of this? Number two, number three, number four. No, you don't have to do that. As you go and visit and you see her, and my advice to you is to visit her at her parents' house. Visit each other at family situations, because you get to know more about the person in their uncomfortable zone or the zone where everybody knows you. So what I'm saying is, get these topics, 13 questions or discussions to plan to talk in the course of getting to know that person. It's up to you which one you want to choose, how you want to say it, insha'Allah ta'ala. There's no easy way of opening up any topic these days, especially when you want to get married. Butterflies are in the stomach, you're nervous, you're sweating, right? One brother, he was so nervous, he didn't get to know this woman for so long, right? For more than one day. His mother said to him, "She's good for you, son." He said, "If you say she's good for me, I don't even need to look at her." So they go and do the wedding. The first time he saw her was on the wedding day. He was happy. On the night when they went home, he didn't know what to say because they haven't talked yet. So he kept looking upwards and sweating, and then he goes to her, "So how's your mother?" How's your mother? So this is why you need to talk and get comfortable a little bit in a supervised environment. Best to talk about yourself first. My advice to men is to talk about yourself first. Now obviously there are extrovert men, introverted men, there are shy men and outward men. Sometimes the women are like that. One time I was doing a marriage for a couple, and the brother, he looked shy. The sister, she was talking. And then I said, "Brother, you don't always buy her flowers. Sometimes you can do some recreational activity with her, buy some chocolates together." And then she jumped up, she goes, "Who told you I like chocolates and flowers, man?" That's how she says it. "I don't like chocolates and flowers." "What do you like?" She goes, "I like going on motorbikes, on skiing and all that stuff." I said, "Well, you all right with that?" He goes, "I love that." I said, go for it. So brothers and sisters, you got to understand each other's language. Anyway, so once you start, it's nice, I say men, you can start off a conversation and start off with icebreakers. Something everybody talks about. Talk about the weather. Crack a joke. Compliment something in their house, around her. Try to avoid complimenting features at the moment. Leave that till later. Talk about things that are neutral, icebreaker. There is a nice little book that talks about communication. There's lots of books that talk about communication. Get a book to learn about communication, read a few pages and go in, inshallah. That's a good idea. So the first thing, one of the things to talk about is how you view marriage life. You can ask her, or she asks you, you ask him, how do you view marriage life? What's marriage life to you? How do you envision marriage? What's marriage to you? How do you see a husband to be and a wife? How do you think their relationship should be? What is marriage life to you? What is family marriage life? How do you see it? You can start by saying, you can say, for example, I grew up thinking of marriage and that it's like this, and I look at my parents and this is the view I have about marriage. Sometimes opening this up will entice the other person to project and to mirror you and to sort of talk as well. So talking about marriage life is a discussion that you need to bring up some way or another and start your conversations. Of course, sentence starters around that topic, and then you branch off and you have a nice conversation. Another time you can talk about a second thing, and I think these are crucial points. A second one is, what qualities would you like to see in a spouse? Or you might start with yourself and say, qualities I like to see in a spouse. That people always ask me this question. They say, what qualities do you like to see in a spouse? So you can see how I'm talking right now too. It's very casual. Don't make the person feel intimidated or anything like that. Try as much as you can. And then she or he will say, what do you like seeing in a spouse? Because they're also ready to know too, right? And you say, well, this is what I like in a spouse. I like to see this or that. And they talk about the things that you like to see. Every person is different. And then the other person will talk to you. So that's another topic to ask and talk about. Number 3, you need to talk about each other's family dynamics. You have to bring family and culture into it. We don't have this Hollywood movie where it's just Romeo and Juliet. Oh, they ended up killing each other. We're going to talk about a Hollywood movie where in the end they live happily ever after and they walk together in the sunset as if there's no one in the entire world but them two. Subhanallah. Them two and the sunset. No. When you get married, just two people get married, families are coming together. Cultures are coming together. Sometimes even whole tribes are coming together, depending on where you're coming from. So you're coming to the whole marriage and to the whole family. You need to know who you're dealing with. The in-laws, the family. You're going to have children, inshallah. Those children, they want their grandparents. They want their uncles and aunts. You've got to look at family. What's the dynamics in your family? And while you're talking about that, talk about how do you get along with your family? What's your relationship with your mum and dad, your siblings? You can start talking about yourself. Say, gosh, I've got a brother, we are so close. Me and my sisters, we're kind of... So talk about that and open these discussions. Talk about culture. I remember once I did a marriage for a couple and the sister, the wife, said to me, brother, what's this? I said, what? She's got a baby with her and another child over there. I'm thinking, here we go. She said, I never knew that every Wednesdays we have to go to his father's house for a barbecue. So you never talked about this before? You never knew? He goes, no. Every Wednesdays. He goes, we'll have to go every Wednesdays to his father. He turns around and goes, brother, ask her. Wallahi, from day one we got married. Every Fridays we have to be at her father's house. I said, so what? So what if you go? Don't you love your husband? Yes. Don't you love your wife? He goes, why did you do it? He says, for her. Why do you do it? She goes, oh, for him. I said, all right, well then, alhamdulillah, that's what marriage is about. It's about giving and taking. Give a little bit of yourself. He gives a little bit of himself. You have to compromise a little bit. Some things you might be uncomfortable with. For the sake of your marriage, do it. That's what marriage is about. But anyway, you've got to talk about these things. Culture. One brother said, I have this, a lot of brothers, they talk about this, subhanAllah. And that's another question, and that is about living arrangements. Living arrangements and family dynamics are very close. Some cultures are very strict. And they put pressure on the son that he and his wife, the daughter-in-law, must live with their parents. And this is a very hot topic for a lot of people. And I can tell you outright, brothers and sisters, that Islam does not recommend for couples to live, for the husband to pressure his wife in living with his parents or with anybody else. A wife has a right to her own dwelling, to her own little dwelling. Even if it's in the back, let's say there's a granny flat, the point is it's her own. She has her own privacy, her own home. That's the therapy for a wife. And to make her home nice, and she's the queen of the house. She does whatever she wants. Brothers and sisters, it's actually oppression and zulm in Islam to pressure or force the wife to live with your parents. Some people might say, but what if we're in financial difficulty? I say to you, that's why you have the period of engagement. You need to talk about these. These are crucial points to talk about. You must talk and agree on them, and right from the beginning. Very important, brothers and sisters. I've seen many fights happen between mother-in-law, daughter-in-law. Sometimes she wants to put a hijab on. Maybe if she doesn't wear the hijab, she can't feel comfortable. The brothers come in, the brother-in-laws come in, sometimes the sister-in-laws. Everybody visits. It's the parents' house. She has no privacy. Sometimes they clash. Mum wants, to organize the house this way. She can't do anything. They clash. Brothers and sisters, this is important to know, inshallah. Have good conversations with your parents. Wallah, I see this all the time happening. Tears, cries, tension, separation and divorce as a result of not talking about living arrangements and dynamics of family and all that. My brothers and sisters, some people, they say to me, but if we talk about that, it's too tense. We start fighting. I said, it's better fighting now than when you get into your marriage and fight. That's the whole point of engagement. That's the whole point of meeting and talking. Right. Let's move on to another one. How you each spend your free time. So, what are your hobbies? Do you do community service work? Do you like going to the movies? Do you watch things? Do you like going on Netflix? Do you like going on social media? Do you have Facebook? What do you do? What pictures do you like putting on? These are very important to talk about in this day and age. You might even talk about what's cheating to you when it comes to social media. It's very important. Some people are very, very sensitive about this point. So discuss these matters about social media, what you like and dislike, and they can talk to you as well. We move on. Finances. You must open a way to talk about finances. If you can't talk together, talk with her father as a man, or talk with the brother, or maybe get someone else to talk with her or someone else to talk with him. But you must talk about financial arrangements. Maybe as you get more comfortable to talk, inshallah, later on, you can talk about financial management. For example, work, managing the money. Is it your money and my money together? Or is it your money is my money and my money is my money is my money? Let me repeat that. Is it your money and my money together? Or is it your money and my money? Or is it your money is my money and my money is my money? Is that how it goes? Yeah. It doesn't matter which one you want to go with, so long as you agree. Have fun, whatever you like. I'm not going to tell you whose money to. But honestly, I just want to say something. That word, your money, when in Islam, I've even heard speakers say this. And everybody claps for them. Yay! Look, in Islam, they say, how many rights the woman has, they say. It's true, they have a lot of rights. They have equal rights to men. Equal, but not exactly the same, but they are equal in number. However, they come and tell you, look at the woman, her money is her money, and his money is her money. Ha ha ha, everybody claps. That's not true. I'll tell you it's not true. That's not what Islam says. What Islam says is, her money is her money. That is true. But not all of his money is her money. Part of it, and it's not money. What the husband has to do is that he must provide for his wife and his children all their needs of living, shelter, clothing, food, protection, security, their needs. He is responsible for their needs and their livelihood. Depending on how generous he is, the more generous he is, the better of a husband he is. That's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He praises a husband who's generous. Which, by the way, you need to talk about finances. You'll understand how generous the person is, how they spend their money. Are they good at finances? Are they not? And this is a very crucial point to understand these dynamics. So, brothers and sisters, he is responsible, part of his wealth, to go onto his family, but not all of it. Same with the wife. Wife keeps her money. Moving on, just on the side point, I remember a couple, they were arguing about money, and the sister said, if my husband lends someone money, should he tell me? Should I know? Should I know where the money is going? I said, look, this is an agreement between you two, but in my opinion, you should know as a wife. Why? Because sometimes you don't know who's going to die, and there's inheritance properties. Doesn't the wife need to know what's going on, what's happening? For example, she has a right to part of that wealth if there was inheritance. So if a person has a trusting wife and a trusting husband, and trust is the first thing, there's nothing wrong with talking about money and wealth and so on. If you don't trust them, well, you can do some other things. You can do what that soccer player did. What's his name? Huh? Hakimi. What did he do? Do you know what he did? What did he do? Yeah, he gave all his money to his mum. Unbelievable. Anyway, I'm not going to comment about that. I'm going to tell you, brothers and sisters, trust is very important. Before you get married to someone, you need to know if you can trust this person. So that's why you talk about these matters. If there is no trust, there is no relationship, as you can see. You're not happy, you're too scared to show your finances, you're too scared to go and come, you're too scared to do anything because you don't trust each other. So trust, transparency, time, talking, and tolerance is important in a marriage, the 5 T's. Another thing to open up is your social life. Talk about your social lives. Introvert, extrovert, these are very important. Knowing a person's friends is very important, because the friends can tell you a lot about yourself, and usually you've got to investigate. A good thing is to look on social media, ask other people about them. There's nothing wrong with that. Number 8, talk about children, having children, and raising them, educating them, and very importantly, naming them. I'll repeat it. Naming them. What did I say? Naming them. This is a big thing. I've seen couples fall apart over the naming of a child. Some people are very strict with culture. And some people, their parents, they interfere too much. That's why when I told you talk about family and how they are, you'll open up these other areas that will tell you a lot about the person and yourself. Look, there's no right or wrong answer here, brothers and sisters. I'm not telling you what the answer should be. What we're telling you is these are factors that you guys need to learn about. And then decide. Go home, think about them, and then make a decision. Don't be hasty. But naming a child, do you want children in the first year, second year? What do you think about children? How many children do you anticipate having? You can't say, well, that's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Well, okay, it is up to Allah, but do you like having children? Do you not like having children? First year, second year, what do you want to do? So these things open up a great discussion. Naming a child is very important. I've seen couples, they fall apart because the father or the mother, they pressure, for example, the son to name the child after the dad's name. In my culture, I've got a culture like that. Up in the village in Lebanon, a lot of Arabs, they got to name the first child of the first oldest son by the grandfather's name. And if you don't, you're like almost an outcast, or you're frowned upon, or they always look at you differently. So you've got to talk about whether this is a big thing in your culture, or whether it's not. You might have a spouse or a future wife who says to you, no, I think a mother should name the child. I carried him, I did. And I will tell you a lot about her personality and how she thinks, whether she's good for you or not. So brothers and sisters, these are important. And the last three things, inshallah, ask about future ambitions and goals, especially career. How important is your career to you? My career is like this. Very importantly also to ask about, number 10, health issues. Health issues, disabilities. If you're embarrassed to talk about them, get someone else to explain that to them. It's very important, brothers and sisters. You don't want to get married and later on you find out severe health issues or deformities or disabilities. That's haram in Islam to hide these things. I've had cases like that before, and they say, well, the brother who married her, he hid something. He hid that he used to have another mistress and he had 2 children from her. And they wanted to get divorced. He says, no, you got to give me the mahr. Another brother married another sister and she had another deformity. She didn't tell him about it because I was embarrassed. It's none of your business. And why can't you accept me that way? It's a right of both the husband and wife to know anything that will place attention on the marriage in relation to their personal self. Number 11, the past. I know. You probably looked it up. A lot of sheikhs and imams said, it's none of anyone's business to know about your past. Allah forgives all sins. Yes, that is true. That is true. People should not expose their past sins. That is true. That is a general blanket rule. But I'm going to just let you think about something. You know yourself. Some sins of the past are not that easy to just dismiss. Stay with me. Stay with me. You with me? Okay. Some sins of the past between telling a potential spouse cannot be easily dismissed. You have to think, is that sin of my past going to show up in my marriage again? Does it have the potential? I'll give you an example. If a person used to be on drugs before and they were addicted and it was hard, how long ago was it? If drugs can come back into the marriage, not in the beginning, but later on it can. Because people take drugs often either for recreation or when they get addicted, it becomes mental issues, depression and all of that stuff. In a marriage, there's going to be ups and downs. A person can resort back to the drugs. Is it important to talk about it? In my opinion, wallahi, you don't have to take it. It's important to talk about it. But of course, there has to be respect and people have to cover up for their sins. Sometimes a person may have had multiple relationships in the past. Now, it's up to you to say it or not say it. It's not a problem. I had a few young people, couple who call me and say, look, this guy has asked for me. Listen, a sister said, a guy has asked for me. Even brothers, they say to me, I want to ask for this sister, but, I had a girlfriend before and I've committed zina a few times and sister says things have happened. What should I do? And look, you don't have to say it outright. You can hint it. You can send someone to say it in a different way. I've helped a few young people when they've come to me and I said, look, if you want, I can talk to the person. And I've done it before in a very respectful and in a way that is a hint without putting the other person on the spot. Now, the reason we say that sometimes what happens, if you get married and that is something that is important to you, if you want to ask that question, you can ask that question. But the other person does not have to answer the question. And then it's up to you if you want to go ahead or not. Let's say they asked you the question and says, look, my sins are in the past, I don't want to talk about them. Well, that's up to, sorry, I scared you. Well, the other person can say, well, I don't want to go ahead, or you go ahead at your own risk. However, talking about it I think is important even in some way. I know couples who got married later on, and when they found out about their past, they came back, pictures came up, things like that, and it caused a trauma, between them. Distrust. So sometimes I say it's good, and at times I say maybe, and at times I say it's none of their business. It's none of their business if it's totally in the past. You've got people, for example, who've converted to Islam, reverted to Islam, or people who repented to Allah, and the other person who's asking for them, they know that they had a non-believing life, or they were in a sinful life. You don't have to talk about the details. You can say, look, I lived a sinful life and I didn't know and I have repented. That's it. You don't have to say much more than that, inshallah. But just remember this, anything that will creep in from the past into your marriage later on, that potentially there's a chance it will and will cause attention, my advice is to hint about it. Mention it in some way. Allahu A'lam. But again, brothers and sisters, I'm not telling you have to. I'm just talking from experience. I've seen later on these problems happen. Allahu A'lam, and I hope inshallah I'm right. Allahu A'lam. Criminal records. I've been in prison before, for example. No, I haven't been in prison. I'm saying that if a person says I've been in prison before, you need to say these things, because that's going to affect the family as well. And lastly, how would you want a wedding? You might be thinking, is that important? It's very important. In fact, saying how you want a wedding and the details of it will tell you so much about the mindset of the person, about their family, about your family, to see if things can get along. I've seen families have fights in weddings over things that weren't clearly talked about before. Some couples have divorced and divided and had fights over a wedding dress, over a ring, over the bouquet of flowers, over the car type, over the hall, over the table, over I don't know what. Oh man, have I got stories for you. But I don't want to say too many stories, because it could be people in our community who might think I'm talking about them. I'm not talking about anybody, but this happens everywhere, brothers and sisters. So it's important to talk about these things. Are there any questions from my brothers or sisters? Yes, Habibi. Why is marriage important? So you can be born. Your mum and dad got married, didn't they? And then you're born. Do you see? So you can come out. You can exist. What's your name? Hamza, mashallah. So marriage is important so that children can happen. Mum and dad can love each other. You can have grandparents. You can have uncles and aunts. And you have a big family. Big families come from marriages. You get it? Do you get money on Eid? If your mum and dad didn't get married and you didn't have big families, you wouldn't get any money. You wouldn't even be born, I think. You got it, Habibi? Obviously, I'm answering a young kid, brothers and sisters, so yes, Habibi. Yeah, good question. Yep. Married or not married? Well, brother is asking, what would you do with teenagers who want to come up, who want to get into relationships and talk to you and you talk to them? And what about the ones who are married? Well, ya akhi, look, it's a long advice. Simple advice, ya akhi, is first of all, you got to know that your teenagers are now older and they see themselves as very, very important. They see themselves as right in a lot of ways, right? And they probably don't think that you know as much about them as what you think you know. So have that in mind, number one. Number two, I would say that you need to establish a friendship with them and say to them, for example, son, daughter, you can always talk to me about anything you like. When I was a little kid, I had relationships that I wanted to get into, and I didn't know what to do. I was like you. I would have sensitivities. I'd be embarrassed. I would think my parents don't know. Say, no, I've been there and done that, and try us out. I'm just here for you, Dad. And whatever, anytime you need to talk about it, we'll talk. Sometimes you might sit down and talk with, say, your wife, and you open up a discussion in front of them. So it's called passively. And you say, what do you, darling, how did we meet? Talk about your story, about your relationship, and how you met with their mum. I think story is letting the guards down, letting them see that how you were once there and did that, opening up some of your vulnerabilities. I think, inshallah, will allow them a door to open up to you. So, and don't pressure them. Tell them how much you respect them. Tell them, son, daughter, you're old enough now, mashallah. And Allah's told me to protect your privacy, but I want to tell you, I'm always here for you, and now you've come of age. Anything you need to talk about, talk to me, to mum. And then every now and then, as I told you, talk about yourself, talk about you and your wife, how you met, talk about relationships with your wife in front of them. So I think, inshallah, this is a good way of opening the door. If you've got married children, same thing. Because this is in the hadith, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, or the qaida, the rule in Islam is anything that is halal, that brings about something that is wrong, then that halal becomes haram. So if I'm going to do something, and I know that that's going to bring something haram, then I don't do it. I know, brother, I know. So brother here is saying, when I say I know, it means I know what what your question is. Sorry about that. I don't know everything. Brother, brother's asking this question about when living together with the in-laws, what if the parents are elderly and they're sick and they need you to live with them? And yes, of course, that is a very valid thing. That's a difficult one. See, when that happens, if you know that they are very sick and they do need you, then you need to talk about that with that potential spouse beforehand. You have to. All right? If they got sick later on and it requires you that you move out of your dwelling and move in with them to look after them in some way, again, you need to talk with your wife about it. You can move in. You can move closer. You cannot oblige her, even when they're sick, to live in their house. That's a sadaqah and a charity from her. But obviously that would cause tension. So in that case, it's a difficult one. You need to try and get through it together and try to minimize. I always say to people, when you have a problem, work through four things. First one, solution. So in this case, solution is to go and live there and she agrees with you and everybody's happy. That's a solution. 90% of cases, you can't solve them. So you go to the next one, minimize it. Instead of living there, live close to there. Or talk with your siblings and each one shares a night at your parents' house. I know some people who do that. So minimize the problem. Share it with your siblings, each one sleeps there, and your wife would agree with you. She can't say no to you, to go and sleep a night or 2 nights with your parents and share them. Living close to them, going to them in the daytime, and then someone else at night. So this is minimizing the situation. Number 3 is employing the situation. That's the third stage. See how you can delegate. So for example, getting somebody to come in and care for them and pay for them. Pay for your siblings and say, look, I can't do it, but I will pay, I'll give money, I will buy things from outside, I will do other matters. It's employing the situation. And if that even doesn't work, subhanAllah, you make dua and you try your best. So, unfortunately, I have seen marriages that do break apart as a result of this, but really, this is why when you get married, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did tell us that it's not only somebody who prays and fasts or is a Muslim is enough. you also got to look at the character and your upbringing. You got to look at the personality, the values that the person has, their family dynamics. Some people are very stubborn, they're harsh, they're dominant, they're controlling. So you got to study these things beforehand. And that's the safest thing, inshallah. Otherwise, subhanallah, it does cause chaos sometimes. Anyway, khair inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assist everyone. Yes, brother. A brother's asking, is there a maximum of time that a husband can be away from his family, from his wife? In the Quran and Hadith itself, primary sources, I don't know of any direct text that says how long. All the Quran and Hadith say is live with them reasonably and give them their rights and be generous to them and make them feel secure and so on. But Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, in his time when he was the Khalifa, he used to take the soldiers with him to the battlefield, and sometimes they would stay long. And one day he's passing by and news came to him about a woman who was alone, a wife, and she said poetry about how she's going through a hard time without her husband, and how she says, I fear sin upon myself without my husband, and I fear the fire. And he knew what she meant. So he went and asked his Hafsa, his daughter, radiallahu anha, and says, how long can a woman a common woman last and keep going in every way, in her emotions and feelings and security and all that stuff with her husband away? And she said 4 months. And then from that day he made a rule, men should not go to war for more than 4 months. But that's war, and he would return them back. Some scholars went for 4 months, but the truth is, brother, everybody's different. Some women can't even be 2 days without their husband. Some women a week. Some people in the beginning of their marriage, they're more closer together, they can't just stay away. And then as they get along and children come along, it's easier to be apart. So it depends. You as a husband, you need to look and know your family, akhi. You need to know what kind of wife you have, the circumstances, their needs, the place you live in, the social norms that you took her in, the culture, the family. Some people marry sisters who come out of a family where she was pampered all her life. Her father's always there giving her. You've got to understand that she's going to be pampered, right? I'm not saying she's a bad person. She could be really good in other ways. Some people marry a woman who's gone through really hard life and her family's always away. Well, if that's your case, so you've got to look at the circumstances. She could be ill, she could be pregnant, she could be breastfeeding, she could be any circumstances. So it's case by case, akhi. All right, I hope inshallah that answers the question. Yes. Good question. You've asked a very good question. I love Dr. Zakir Naik, wallah. He's beautiful. What? Oh, the brother. The brother has asked a very good question. He is asking, what is the ruling on men marrying from the people of the book and vice versa? No, I added that one. You didn't ask it, did you? It's my fault. Okay, I put myself in a trap. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it permissible for chaste men, chaste Muslim men to marry chaste women from among the Jews and the Christians and among the Muslims. And He allowed us to eat from their slaughtered meat as well. It's halal. Halal to eat from Jews and Christians slaughtered meat. Brother's asking, what is the ruling about Muslim men marrying women of the people of the book, Christians, Jews? Well, brother, look, this is a very difficult question because there's so many variables involved. Where you live, the circumstances, what does chaste mean? What are the consequences? What are the laws surrounding it that will affect you? When the verse came down, it talked about an ideal situation where people lived in Muslim countries, where it was governed by Islamic law, Sharia, and Christian and Jewish women were chaste, meaning chaste means that, and even for a Muslim woman, so Muslim woman, Christian woman, Jewish woman, chaste meaning they weren't known for how can I say it? No, not zina. More than that. So they used to hire themselves and known to sleep around. You know, she hires herself and sleep around. I'm answering him. But if somebody's committed zina, it doesn't mean that they're not chaste. They could repent. That's why I said not zina. So they're known to promiscuity. They keep doing all that. So usually, I don't want to say the word. You know what I'm talking about. But other than that, they can marry them. And that's just to create harmony and existence and coexistence. But not the other way around, because in Islam, in an ideal situation, a Muslim woman marrying a Christian man or a Jewish man meant that he had authority over the house, her and the children. And Islam wouldn't give up the children to a Christian or Jewish man. Now in our time, I do not recommend, wallahi, for any, that's a very good question, ya akhi, any brother, Muslim brother or any Muslim sister, to marry a non-Muslim spouse. I'll tell you why. Even if the Quran said Christian or Jewish. And look, I have to say, I have done marriages for brothers who married Christian and Jewish sisters. And I'll tell you why. But I don't recommend it at all. Why don't I recommend it? Neither man or woman. Here in this country, I have seen when divorces happen, when separations happen, when celebrations, Christmas, Eid, Easter, church, mosque, synagogue, parents getting involved, children becoming confused. I've seen a lot of clashes happen. And marriage is about compatibility. It's about peace and tranquility between the two. And what happens is that a lot of the boundaries are broken and religious practice is restricted. And there's always this, you can't get too religious afterwards, and there are certain things you want to do. You always got to, you've always got to make 100 different calculations. So it's quite hard. It's quite hard, There could be both good people, but it creates a strain on the marriage from a religious aspect. And then it creates a strain on children as well, and I've seen it a lot happen. And when divorces and separations happen, the mother automatically takes most of the time custody, or children live with the mother most of the times, if they are still children and the mother's fine, which is understandable. Children need their mother. And I've seen in divorces where ill feelings start to develop, and the mother or the father may teach the children against the other parent, and coming with that also their values, against their religious practices, against everything. A child starts to suffer in that sense. If she's a Muslim woman, even if there's tension and hatred between them, she'll still teach her children Islam and raise them as Muslims, right? Even if they never saw their father again. Now, I'm talking about generally. Not every single case is like that. My advice for the brothers, and it's a very good question, and our sisters, marry the person you're going to be compatible with, first of all, religiously and Islamically. I know many people that got married. One brother got married to a Christian sister. He said, "Brother, can you convert her for me?" And his mother said, "Convert her for me." So what do you mean I'm going to convert her for you? I'm not God. I don't control her heart. You can't convert people. You don't force them into marriage. You don't make them become Muslim. You don't tell them you have to become Muslim by manipulating their love. That's a separate matter. It's got nothing to do with that. So anyway, I remember that time I went and I said I'll speak to her about Islam. If she's happy, she can convert. If not, it's up to her. So I went there and spoke and whatever, and her mother was there, and in the end, she wasn't very convinced. I said, "Look, now I know that they had been together for a while, 6 years, I think. I've seen many couples like that. That's why I do their marriage. I just say, look, this is better than them to keep going like this with no strings attached and no contracts made." So I said, "You can stay a Christian and marry him." She goes, "I'm relieved." Her mother said, "Oh, we're so happy. We don't have to convert to marry." I go, "No." They go, "All right, thank you." And I looked at him and her. I said, "Told you, man. You don't force her into the marriage. She doesn't want to." Anyway, they went to the church and did their marriage there under a priest. The whole Father, Son, Holy Ghost. They did the marriage with me. They did the circumcision for the child. Then went and took and baptize their children. Christmas comes, they do Christmas. Eid comes, they do Eid. So they're living two religions. So there's a conflict in their values, their identity, their religion, their everything. And you might think, well, at least they're getting along. Love is everything. What about the love of Allah? What about the purpose that we've been living in? What about God who created the man and the woman? And they're always stuck. It's not the only couple. There are many couples like that. Alhamdulillah, some of them, they do change. And the sister truly loves Islam and becomes a good Muslim, alhamdulillah. And I've seen some of them, not many, where each one stayed in their own religion and the children were fine, alhamdulillah, and they were taught well, and the Christian or Jewish wife respected it all and everything. But that's when things are going well. When things don't go well, then the religion is going to be among the first things that is going to be questioned. Now, as I said, this is not in all cases. My advice to my brothers and sisters, look, if they revert to Islam and genuinely, alhamdulillah, that's good. I know a lot of brothers who that happened to them and their wives converted, and mashallah, they're amazing. Great role models. But to remain a Christian or a Jew and marrying them, I think there are just too many problems that happened and rise from that. My advice to you, brothers and sisters, is marry a Muslim. It's better for you, more compatible. And even in times of conflict, at least, the deen still stays somewhat intact. Is that a good answer? Is that kind of... All right. Sensitive, love and emotions is very hard to deal with, I understand. Yes, brother. Yeah. In an ideal Islamic law situation, only the Muslim man can marry a Christian or Jewish woman, because the laws support the upbringing of the child and custody situations. Yeah. But even then, it's not advisable. There's a story about Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman, Sahabi, the companion at the time of Umar radiallahu anhu. He married a Jewish woman. And he said to her, divorce her, ya Hudhayfa. He said, why? Is it halal or haram? He said, it's halal. He said, but I fear that you're a role model and most men are going to follow you. And those women, the women of the people of the book, don't cover and abstain from interaction with men as much as the Muslim women. So then the Muslim men will see them more, and then they will forget about the Muslim women, and our Muslim sisters will stay harder for them to find potential husbands, while the rest of the men copy you and they go and focus on the Jewish and Christian women. So that, even in their time, it was not recommended. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Yes, Habibi. How is marriage half of your deen? Well, deen means your life, your whole life. Isn't that right? It's your whole life. So when you get married, you get to practice and do things in your deen that you couldn't do it when you're not married. For example, you get to look after children and raise them. If you're not married, you're not going to look after children and raise them. That's part of the deen. You get to share love and connection with a wife and a husband. If you're single, you're not going to be able to. And all these are part of the deen. They make you closer to Jannah. That's all I'm going to answer you, Habibi, because if we go more than that, it's going to be MA rated. Habibi. Yes, last question.